Hello friends, today we will discuss about the diseases of optic nerve. So our lecture, the what is the layout of the lecture? So first we will discuss something about general structure of the optic nerve, then we'll discuss about science of optic nerve dysfunction, then what are the various optic neuropathies or optic nerve diseases, and lastly we'll discuss about optic atrophy. So optic nerve is the second cranial nerve, as you all know of. It is made up of axons of ganglion cells of the retina, and it is strictly not a nerve, but it is a part of the track of the brain. It is about 47 to 50 millimeter in length, and it is divided into four parts. The part inside that is called as intraocular part, then the part inside the orbit is intraorbital part, and there is a optic foramen, so it passes to the optic foramen. So the part of the optic nerve that passes to optic nerve foramen is called as intracranial part, and the part inside the brain is called as intracranial part. So what are the signs of optic nerve dysfunction or optic nerve diseases? So optic nerve is responsible for visual acuity or vision. So the patient will present with reduced vision or visual acuity. Then the patient will also feel difference in the sensitivity of colors, that is called as dyschromatopsia, decreased color hues. Then the patient will have diminished light brightness sensitivity and diminished contrast sensitivity. Some patients also can make out visual field defects. So how do we detect the that there is some problem in optic nerve? Friends, the most important test is pupillary reflex. Normally the pupils are brisk to the light, but if the optic nerve is affected, then the pupillary reaction in that time may be affected. The pupils may be sluggish, and there may be a relative afferent pupillary defect. That is the most important and most sensitive sign to detect the optic nerve dysfunction. So how do we do that? What we do is we flash the light in the right eye, then we transfer the light into the left, and from the left again to the right. So when we are doing this swinging or transfer of the light from one eye to the other eye, the eye in which we are putting the light, the pupil should constrict. But if the pupil dilates, that means that there is a presence of relative afferent pupillary defect or RAPD. So this is very easy test to elicit, and it is very sensitive. So all of you must be able to elicit the relative afferent pupillary defect. So, how does optic nerve is affected? The optic nerve may be inflamed, as in optic neuritis, or there may be ischemia to the optic nerve, leading to ischemic optic neuropathy, or some toxins like alcohol can damage the optic nerve, leading to toxic optic neuropathy. Nutritional, especially in alcoholic patients, there may be nutritional optic neuropathy because of deficiency of vitamin B1. And then glaucoma, of course, affects the optic nerve. There are some hereditary diseases like Leber's optic neuropathy, in which the optic nerve is affected. And if the intracranial pressure is raised, then also the optic nerve is affected. This is called as papilledema. We'll discuss this in later in slight detail. So what is optic neuritis? So optic neuritis is nothing but inflammation of the optic nerve. It can be classified variously. One classification is according to the site of optic nerve involvement. If the optic disc is involved, then it is called as optic papillitis. And if the optic nerve is involved behind the globe, that is in the retrobulbar portion, then it is called as retrobulbar neuritis. So what is the etiology of optic neuritis? It could be because of demyelinating diseases like such as multiple sclerosis. In childhood, infections such as measles and parotitis can cause optic neuritis. This may not be necessary because of the virus, but it is because of the immune response to the virus. Then infection of the adjacent structures such as meninges, orbit, or nasal sinuses can also involve the optic nerve, leading to infectious optic neuritis. And infections of the eyeball such as retinitis and uveitis also can cause optic neuritis. So how do we classify according to the site? You can see clearly in this slide This is the first slide that is showing first picture on your left side, that is showing retrobulbar neuritis. So if you look at the optic disc, it appears absolutely normal, okay, because optic nerve is affected behind the eyeball and optic disc essentially is normal. And this condition may be truly described as the patient sees nothing and the doctor sees nothing. मतलब patient को दिख नहीं रहा है and we are also not able to make out the what is the problem. But in this situation, relative afferent pupillary defect plays a very important role. This patient, even if his optic disc is normal, there will be definitely presence of relative afferent pupillary defect, and this is the most frequent type of optic neuritis that occurs in adults, and it is because of the demyelinating diseases. There are certain disorders in which myelin sheath of the nerve is affected. So in these demyelinating disorders, such as multiple sclerosis, this retrobulbar neuritis occurs. So this is number one. And if you can see in the second picture, you can clearly see that the optic disc is not normal. The disc margins are blurred, the disc is swollen and elevated, and this is because the optic nerve head is affected. So what is papillitis? Papillitis is nothing but inflammation of the optic nerve head. Papilla is optic nerve head is also called as papilla. So inflammation of optic nerve head is called as papillitis. There will be hyperemia. The optic disc will look, the surface of the optic disc will look red in color and it will be swollen. So the disc margins will be blurred and there will be edema of the optic disc. And there may be hemorrhages around the optic disc. So these are usually flame shaped hemorrhages, and this is usually seen in child after viral infections. That is a para-infectious or immune mediated optic neuritis. Okay, the third type is neuroretinitis. Neuro means nerve. So in this optic nerve, and retina means retina. So in this there is inflammation of optic nerve as well as adjacent retina. So concomitant swelling of optic nerve head and macula is called as neuroretinitis. So in this neuroretinitis, usually there is inflammation of the surface of optic disc leading to optic disc edema and hyperemia as in papillitis. But in addition to that, there will be exudates in the macular area because the retina is also inflamed. So there is a formation of macular star because in the macula the exudates form around the macula. The exudates which appear in the macula appear like star, give the appearance of star. So it is macular star, and it may be because of viral infection or infection of the adjacent tissues. So in this photograph, it is very clear that the optic disc is involved, and also there are exudates in the macula in the form of star. So this is neuroretinitis. So what happens in demyelinating optic neuritis? Basically, in the demyelinating diseases, the myelin sheath of the nerve is affected. So this is affected in the optic nerve also, leading to optic neuritis. So what are the clinical features of this demyelinating optic neuritis? So there may be, so the most important thing is that there is sudden loss of vision, monocular visual impairment, and there is pain in around the eyes because the optic nerve sheath also has some relation with the muscle sheath of superior rectus and medial rectus, lateral rectus muscle. So let us go to the previous slide. So what are the signs of optic nerve? Usually if you see, let us first discuss about the symptoms. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms are definitely reduction in vision in one eye, and there is pain in around the eye. The pain is mild and it is there when the eye moves. So these are usually the symptoms of optic nerve disease, that there is monocular vision loss and there is pain in around the eye, especially in when there is movement of the eye. Remember, there is no redness, there is no discharge from the eye. So what are the signs? The visual acuity may be variably affected, friends. It may be PL negative or it may be 6/9. But if you see that if you check the color vision will be impaired. The patient is not able to make the hue. Patient will definitely notice that the hue of the color will be reduced in the affected eye. Then there is relative afferent pupillary defect. In papillitis, there will be definitely optic disc involvement in the form of edema of the optic nerve head, but in retrobulbar neuritis, the optic disc is normal. And if you retrobulbar neuritis is a recurrent disease, so how do we make that the patient has already suffered from attack of optic neuritis in past? So you can see the temporal portion of the disc where you will notice the pallor of the optic disc. So this is a slide showing papillitis. You can see that you cannot make out the disc margin at all in this slide. The disc is swollen, the disc is red in color, the disc surface is red in color, and there is tortuosity of the blood vessels around the disc. There are some hemorrhages around the disc also. So this is temporal pallor, which is showing, which is suggesting to us that there may be previous attack of retrobulbar neuritis. So if you do the perimetry of the patient with optic neuritis, then you can see central and paracentral scotomas. Scotomas means area of reduced threshold or reduced sensitivity, and there may be diffuse depression of the sensitivity of entire central 30 degrees of the field, or there may be scotoma or area of blackness in the central and paracentral area. Central means adjacent to the central part, adjacent to the fixation. So this para-infectious optic neuritis, as you can see that it is common in children. It is seen in children, and it is usually after infections like measles or parotitis. Infectious optic neuritis presents as usually neuroretinitis, and it is associated with infections of the adjacent structures like meninges or sinuses, as we have discussed earlier. So the treatment here will be the treatment of the cause. There are certain autoimmune diseases such as that also cause non-infectious optic neuritis, such as sarcoidosis. So we have already discussed about neuroretinitis. Yes. So these are again, for the sake of repetition, let us discuss this once more because it is very important. In optic neuritis, there will be subacute monocular vision loss, and there will be painful extraocular movements. There will be relative afferent pupillary defect, dyschromatopsia, decreased contrast sensitivity, and there will be visual field deficits. So when a patient comes to you with when you are suspecting optic neuritis, what do? Basically, we should do some laboratory investigations like CBC and ESR. ESR will be raised if it is because of some inflammation. Then we can also do ANA and ACE to rule out autoimmune diseases. Then we can do this, we can rule out Lyme disease or Bartonella infection, and we can also do TB skin test. Chest X-ray will also help us to note whether there is an infection in the chest. And the most important thing that we should do in optic neuritis, whenever you are suspecting optic neuritis, if the patient's visual acuity is not very low, then you do automated perimetry. Automated perimetry will tell us about any presence of any visual field defects or any visual field abnormalities. And MRI, because MRI will show us whether there is any abnormality in brain orbits or optic nerve. So there will be nerve sheath enhancement that will be seen in optic neuritis, and these are the demyelinating plaques which are present, which are very characteristic of multiple sclerosis or demyelinating diseases that can be picked up very easily by MRI. So what do we do in optic neuritis, friends? So basically, first we have to find out the cause, and as I have already told you that in infectious optic neuritis we have to treat the infection, right? That is the first thing, and then we can give steroids to reduce the inflammation of the optic nerve. So commonly we encounter demyelinating optic neuritis. So what do we do in demyelinating optic neuritis? See, there is one very landmark trial that is called as optic neuritis treatment trial, that is ONTT. So this trial concluded that optic neuritis because of demyelinating diseases will recover on its own even if we don't give steroids. So we should not give steroids in retrobulbar or optic neuritis because of demyelinating disease. However, there are some exceptions. If the patient is uniocular, then in that situation we must give steroids. And the most important thing is that if we are decided to give steroids in optic neuritis because of demyelinating disease, we must always give this intravenous methylprednisolone, and the dose is 1 gram per day for 3 days. Because if we give oral steroids, there is a chance of recurrence, there is an increased risk of recurrence of the same disease. So we should not give steroids, and if we decide to give steroids, we should always give intravenous methylprednisolone. And there are if the patient this is a notoriously recurrent disease, this retrobulbar neuritis because of multiple sclerosis. So interferons have been tried to prevent recurrence of this optic neuritis in multiple sclerosis. The next disease is anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. It is nothing but it is characterized by it is because of occlusion or decreased perfusion of the short posterior ciliary arteries which supply the optic nerve head. This is basically because of ischemia, so that's why it is called as ischemic optic neuropathy. And what are the features? The features are again sudden loss of vision with pallid disc swelling. Pallid means pale disc swelling. So this is the etiology of this AION is not clearly known to us, but there are certain risk factors like hypertension, high blood pressure, then ocular hypertension means increased intraocular pressure, and these may predispose a person for this AION. Okay, there are other risk factors also like local vascular lesion of the papilla, then there hypotension and increased blood viscosity. So these are the other risk factors of AION. So how does a patient present with AION? So the symptoms are very characteristic. There is sudden painless non-progressive vision loss, and as in other optic nerve diseases there is afferent pupillary defect, and but the fundus here will show a pale disc swelling. Pallid means pale. The disc swelling is pale means the disc is pale, it is not red as compared with papillitis. So there is a pale disc swelling often involving a segment of disc, and there may be flame shaped hemorrhages, and after this AIN regresses, then there is optic atrophy, and there is altitudinal field defect that is very characteristic of AION. So there are two types of AIN. One is non-arthritic, that is common, that is usually seen in 50 to 60 years of age, and it is because of hypertension. And there is arthritic AIN that is seen because of giant cell arthritis. So basically optic atrophy is nothing but it is a non-specific response of the optic nerve because of damage to any cause, and the reasons are like glaucoma or optic neuritis or retinopathy. There are so many lesions, or there is any compression of the optic nerve, or there is trauma to optic nerves. These all can cause optic atrophy. So this is the normal fundus which is seen on the left side, where you can see, please notice the optic neuroretinal rim means the area of optic disc around the cup. It is pink in color. It is vascular, where in optic atrophy this neuroretinal rim is very much white in color. It is a chalky white appearance, and the disc margins are excessively clear in optic atrophy. So this is how optic atrophy looks like. Optic atrophy can be because of primary cause or because of secondary cause. And how does the patient present? The patient will not have any vision in that eye, and there may not be any very significant visual field constriction, or there may be absolutely a black field. So primary optic atrophy is because of damage of visual pathway behind the cribriform plate, and lesions of optic disc, retina and choroid will cause secondary optic atrophy. So retrobulbar neuritis will cause a primary optic atrophy. So the optic disc surface will be pale, clear with clear border, in case of primary optic atrophy, whereas we might notice some sclerosis in case of secondary optic atrophy. The disc margins may not be clear, they may be blurred, and there may be grayish white and dirty dark appearance of the optic disc. And the vessels of retina will be normal in primary optic atrophy, whereas in secondary optic atrophy there may be narrowing of the or sheathing of the arteries of the retina. So when a patient comes to you with optic atrophy, then you take a detailed history of the patient to note down whether there was any episode of optic neuritis in the past. Then you do a proper ocular examination of fundus, pupillary reactions, visual acuity. Then you also check visual fields and you do MRI to rule out any intracranial disease. If possible, you treat the primary disease in optic atrophy. So the last topic that we want to discuss is about papilledema. So what is papilledema, friends? It is a very important topic. So by definition, the optic disc edema because of raised intracranial pressure is called as papilledema. That is very clear. Whenever there is a rise in intracranial pressure and it causes optic disc edema, it is called as papilledema. So any space occupying lesion in the brain which compresses on the ventricles and which causes the raised intracranial pressure can cause papilledema. So that is the most important cause, intracranial cause. That is, there may be tumor, there may be hemorrhage, there may be edema, there may be abscess. Sometimes tumors inside the orbit or inflammation inside the orbit also can cause papilledema. And uveitis and ocular hypertension also can cause disc edema. So how does it happen? Basically, there are two theories. Whenever the pressure inside the brain is increased, the intracranial pressure is increased, that causes blockage of the exoplasmic flow of the optic nerve, and that can cause papilledema. And the second theory is the ischemia because of the raised intracranial pressure of the optic nerve can cause papilledema. So what are the symptoms? Usually the symptoms will be of the primary disease of the brain. But what happens in the eye? In the eye, there will be episodes of transient, often bilateral. Transient means reversible. Bilateral visual loss. So these are called as amaurosis fugax. And this is a very characteristic symptom. Patient says his vision is, there is complete blackout for 5 to 10 seconds and the vision again comes back. So that is the initial manifestation of papilledema. Then the patient will have headache and projectile vomiting because of raised intracranial pressure. So how does it look like? In the first thing that happens is that there is a shallowing of the optic cup. The cup of the optic disc first becomes filled. The cup of the optic disc will becomes full. So there is shallowness of the optic cup, followed by the blurring of optic disc margin. And as the papilledema progresses, there will be edema of the optic disc, and then there will be hemorrhages. The optic disc will look red in color and hyperemic in color, and there will be hemorrhages around the margins of the optic disc. So these are the 4 stages of papilledema. In early stage, there will be hyperemic disc with the blurring of disc margins and peripapillary retinal hemorrhages. In advanced stage, there will be bilaterally swollen and hyperemic disc with flame-like retinal hemorrhages, cotton wool spots, macular hemorrhages, and exudates. In the chronic stage, there will be actually the prominence of cup and disc will disappear. The hyperemia will reduce and there will be hard exudates. And in atrophic stage, the optic disc becomes atrophic, the neuroretinal rim becomes pale, and there will be gryosis and narrowing of the retinal vessels. So what do we do for papilledema? So for papilledema, we must find out the cause. So first thing that we should do is neuroimaging to rule out any intracranial space occupying lesion. And if we don't find any cause, then it is usually because of benign intracranial hypertension, or it is also called as pseudotumor cerebri. So how to diagnose that? We might have to do guarded lumbar puncture to find out the intracranial pressure, raised intracranial pressure. So first thing that we should do in papilledema is we should find the cause, then we should treat the cause. And in some patients we have to do optic nerve sheath decompression to halt the vision loss. So if the papilledema remains for 6 months, then the patient's vision will be irreversibly affected. So we can reduce the intracranial pressure transiently by giving some medicines like acetazolamide. This toxic optic neuropathy is because of toxins. These toxins can be anti-tubercular drugs like ethambutol or isoniazid, or it can be because of alcohol also. And this methanol, methyl alcohol ingestion will cause acute optic disc toxicity. Okay, so thank you friends. If you have any difficulty, you are always free to ask me.